All right, guys, so I have a challenge here for you that has to do with object literals, and it has multiple steps, but don't get overwhelmed because it's pretty easy. For those of you that already know the basics of JavaScript will have no problems with this. But we're going to take it step by step. So I'm going to read step one. You can pause the video and do it. I'll do it, and then I'll go to step two, step three, etc. So step one is to create an array of objects called library. So have a variable called library, set it to an array, have three objects inside with the properties of title, author, and status. Title and author should be strings, whatever you want, whatever book title and author. And then status should be another object, so a nested object with the property of own, reading, and read, which should all be Boolean values. Okay, so if you own the book, if you're reading it, and if you've read it. So for all status, set own to true, and then set reading and read to false. So basically, you just need to construct an array of objects. So pause the video now and go ahead and do that. And I'm going to do that now as well. So I'm going to create a library array here. And then inside it says to do three objects with properties of title. So I'll just put that for now. And then we also want author, which is going to be a string. And then we want the status, which is going to be a nested object. And status is going to have own, which we want to set to true. It's going to have reading, which we set to false. And then read, which we also set to false. Okay. So I'm going to just copy this because we want three of these. Okay, so we just want to make sure we had three. And you can put whatever you want for the titles and authors. I'm going to say The Road Ahead. I'm just putting anything here. This is by Bill Gates. And then we have the Steve Jobs biography by Walter Isaacson. I think that's how you spell it. And then we have Mockingjay. And that's by Suzanne Collins. Okay. So here's step one, right? We just created an array with three objects with the properties specified. So now let's move on to step two. So you finished reading all the books. Set the read value for all of them to true. Do not edit the initial object, set the values using dot notation. So don't just go in and change read to true here. We're going to come down here and set all of the read values to true. So you can pause the video and do it yourself. But this is going to be pretty simple. Basically, we just want to say library. And there's multiple ways you could do this. You could loop through it, but we haven't gone over loops or anything. So let's say library 0, and we want to set status, right? And then we want to set read to true. And we're going to do that for all of them. So let's say 1 and 2 as well. And then we'll just go ahead and do a console log of library. And if we take a look, we should now see in status that read is true for all of these. So read is true and status read is true. So that's step two. Step three is to destructure the title from the first book and rename the variable to first book. So we went over destructuring and naming a couple videos back. So let's do that. We're going to go, let's just put a comment here and pause the video if you're going to do it on your own. Let's say step 2, and this is step 1. Okay, so step 3, we're gonna destructure. So from the destructure the title from the first book and rename it to first book. So we know to destructure an object, we use curly braces, and we want to set this to the object name, which is library. We want to destructure the title, right? So I'll say title, and then let's console log title. Actually, I'm going to get rid of this console log right here. So we'll save that. We get undefined, and that's because we're in an array. It's not a single object called library. So we want to get the first book. If I save that, we get the row ahead. Now, to rename this variable, we just use a colon. So we can say colon, and then we'll say first book, and then we should be able to console log the first book variable and get the row ahead. So that's step 3. So step 4 is to simply turn the library object into a JSON string. So you can pause the video and do that, and that's pretty simple. Let's say step 4. So we'll create a new variable. We'll call it library JSON, and then let's set that to JSON.stringify, and we want to pass in the library object, and then we'll go ahead and console log library JSON. And now we should have our library as a JSON string. All right, so that's it. I know that was pretty simple for those of you that already know JavaScript basics, but if you didn't, then hopefully this helped you out. So in the next section, we're going to go ahead and start looking at functions and scope.